Hi, Connor.
Hi, Trenton. Welcome to Switching Reels.
Welcome to Switching Reels. This has been a doozy of a one to try and record, which has been great. This is a late breaking episode that we were not planning to do.
Yeah. Actually, before we get too far, never mind, my phone's dead.
Oh, nice. You can use mine.
I was going to check where our current movie is on the
IMDb top 250 list.
They've already seen the thumbnail, so
yeah, they already know what this is.
Dune Part 2. So the reason we're checking this is this went as high as 10
right now,
and it is down to 14 at this point. But it's starting to move a little bit slower, which tells us it probably won't be dropping too drastically unless public opinion on this changes.
Yeah, Across the Spider-Verse is now at like 30 something. It's 35.
Okay,
so
which is pretty close to where it was when we...
It was 12.
It was 12?
It was really high.
Okay, that's fair.
I'll have to go and double check because I don't change the titles afterwards. But yeah,
that's
so
fair.
We'll see. We'll see where it moves.
Yeah. So this one, it will probably move around. We have actually... this is going to be our Dune episode where we cover the first book.
Yes, exactly. We just finished watching Dune 1, Dune Part 1, sorry. Yep. I have seen that twice, and now I've seen Dune Part 2 3 times with all the different people that I've gone to see it with, including Connor, who's seen it 1.5 times.
Yeah. All right, story time.
Let's go.
I had a week where I was just getting horrible sleep every single night, and I went to see Dune in IMAX, Dune Part 2 in IMAX with Trenton, and I, upon rewatch, did not actually fall asleep during it. I just wasn't awake enough through any portion of it to actually make it into a cohesive story.
You're right. Right before the storm wall. Can guarantee it. I had to nudge you multiple times.
Okay, that's fair. But again, every single scene in that movie I had watched before.
Good.
So I went back to watch it again. I'm like, okay, I've seen all of this.
I know it.
I just know what's going on now. Which,
poor guy. He was so tired.
Yeah. Honestly, it's a little frustrating because the spectacle of seeing this first time in IMAX, I kind of wish I would have had that full experience for. That said, not bitter at all. 100%. Just by the kindness of people around me, I was able to see it again the second time, and I do not begrudge that at all.
Nope.
So, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, man.
So we will be talking about the entirety of Dune, and we'll probably get into some of the later books as well.
Exactly. Spoilers for Dune the books as well as Dune the movie parts 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Which I think probably we just jump the wall now.
Yeah.
So we don't even have to worry.
I think we should talk about our
ratings.
Our ratings first.
Let's do it. All right. So Dune Part 1. I have a technical 10. There's nothing wrong technically with that movie in my heart.
I agree with that.
Enjoyment is at 9.5. 9 to 9.5.
I agree with that as well.
And then Dune Part 2, I have technically at a 9 to 9.5.
Okay.
And enjoyment, I have at a 9 to 9.5. So half step down on both.
Okay. I would say technical is still a 10 for me on Dune Part 2. I think it might even be slightly better only because of the fact that they've had 2 years to...
They did a really good job with it.
Yeah.
Again, this is 9.5, everybody.
Yeah.
Go and listen to us on other movies where Trenton has just hated it.
Yeah. A light to strong 9 is still a really great score. But yeah, I think as far as enjoyment goes, I might hit it down another half step as well. That's a light to strong 9 for me as well. For reasons that I'll get into, but honestly, most of them are going to come down to nuance that the book had that I feel like was lost in the movie.
Totally.
While I think that the first one had some of that, most of the time it was stuff when I went, but honestly, could they have done that better?
Exactly.
And there are enough things, especially in the first one, that make me go, like, I don't know if I could have pulled off what they did, like, even conceptually, let alone actually doing it. To the point where I'm like, you kind of get a pass on the things that you just don't feel like doing.
Exactly.
I don't necessarily feel that way about the second movie. So,
I'm excited. Grabbing our ladder.
Short version, we both felt very good about both of the movies.
Very good about both of the movies. They're both absolutely fantastic films, and if you haven't seen them yet, please do.
Yes.
Dune Part 2 just hit $500 million in the box office. So
that's
$500 million.
That's a lot of money for a movie.
Yeah, that's huge.
And it makes me very excited for Dune Messiah.
Yeah,
whenever it comes out.
I liked Dune Messiah, the book. So I'm stoked.
I didn't know that you ended up reading that one.
I've read book 2. I've read books 1 and 2. I just haven't read 3.
Okay.
I started 3.
Yeah. 3 is when you start going off the deep end.
Yeah.
And then 4 is when you really go off the deep end.
Is when you're in the deep end. Good. All right. So we're going over the walls.
Yep.
Like, comment, subscribe. If you want us to be doing some more things, let us know.
Yeah.
We have a Ghibli tier list on the works at some point in the future.
Yeah.
As well as just a bunch of other stuff that we've already done. So let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't.
Yeah. So we are now over the shield wall.
Yeah, over the shield wall.
Spoiler wall.
Yeah, love that.
Okay.
Rename it as shield wall. That would be lovely.
I actually probably should have said this before the spoiler wall, but I watched every adaptation and background thing that I could find on adaptations that didn't happen about Dune.
Connor really likes Dune.
I really like Dune. All right, so if you've been watching the podcast for any amount of time, you probably have picked up on the fact that I am writing books.
You are.
Multiple. And having difficulty finishing any but the first one that I did, which was awful. That said, the reason I am writing books is because I reread Dune right before the last movie came out, and that made me go, I should read more books. And then I read another book, and when I was reading that one, I'm like, I should write something.
Yeah.
So yeah, between Dune and Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, like, you can basically trace me wanting to write back to 2 books.
Gorgeous series.
And Dune is wonderful.
Yeah, Dune is fantastic from the couple that I've read.
Yeah.
I loved the first book, reading that, and I need to reread it again now because it's been a couple years. I think I read it I read it before the first movie came out. Which is
I remember prompting you to do that, and
yes.
I think you were planning on doing it already, but I
always like the prompts that make it a lot easier to go and do the things I want to do.
I'm not gonna lie, I do get a little pushy with the book.
Yeah, you do.
With people in real life. I'm like, wait, you haven't read Dune? Let me give you a copy.
Exactly.
Get it back to me whenever you can. It's for giving to people.
That's why I have it.
No, seriously, I have a copy.
That makes total sense. I need to go and get a second copy because I think that is a good idea.
But yeah, that actually that will bring me to my first issue with part 2.
Okay, awesome.
Which is what I kind of want to jump into right away.
Yeah, do we want to do summaries?
Oh, yeah, I guess we should do that. Yeah.
Let's summarize Dune. I'm going to let you go first so I don't do my weird one and then, wreck your thoughts.
Let's see. Paul Atreides moves from Caladan, which is a watery planet. It's basically Scotland. Scotland, the planet.
Exactly.
He moves with his family to a desert planet. and there is a trap laid there for his entire family because the Emperor is afraid of them, and it is created in conjunction with another family that has a long-standing feud with his family. They fight, and then Paul is sent out into the desert where he runs into the Fremen, who are native to the land and also have a religion that has been built up around essentially the coming of a Messiah. And this is my issue, where the books and the movies diverge, is Paul in the books starts not accidentally, but more incidentally fulfilling the role of this Messiah. And in the movie, his mom basically sets everything up so that he fulfills the role of a Messiah. And then he has revenge on the Harkonnens, that family that attacked his family, and marries the daughter of the Emperor, securing basically his rule as Emperor of the Galaxy. Also, he falls in love with a Fremen girl long before this. I can't summarize Dune.
I loved that.
That's as close as I could get.
It was fantastic.
Fortunately, we're on the other side of the spoiler wall, so if you don't want to know what I'm talking about, it means you haven't watched Dune and you need to go do it. Or read it, better yet.
Or both.
Yeah, do both.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Absorb as much. All right, so my summary is there's a secret society of women who want to better the universe. So far, they've only been able to let women into their exclusive club. But they've been trying for thousands of years to get a man in. Which is kind of hard. They're not very smart. Something about the chromosomes. I don't know. They meld whenever this happens. So, thousands of years go by. Cue Paul Atreides. He has that special man sauce. That allows
you
him...
mark all of these explicit, right?
Yes. He's got that special mojo that allows him to be part of this women's club. But the weird thing with the women's club is the women can see backwards pretty well, and they make plans for the future, but they can't see it. This guy has the ability to potentially see forward. So this guy goes to a planet that has a lot of hallucinogen pooped out by worms. Don't worry about it. I know, that's not correct. The worms make the spice. The spice rules the galaxy. That's how this works. So, whoever controls the spice controls the galaxy. Paul gets to the point that he ingests so much spice in such a weird amount of bloodstream that he can now see the future and the past, and he can do anything he wants, essentially. And so he becomes emperor, because everyone that has essentially omniscience should become emperor. And then he rules the galaxy until he dies in book 2.
Our summaries together kind of approach painting a picture of what Dune is.
Also, he starts a holy war because the people that were all locked on this planet that had been prepped by this secret lady society are really itching to kill something. And they do. A lot of some things.
Yeah. I was excited to do this, and now it's killing me inside.
I just lance-racked your brain.
Yeah, but the problem is, I did as bad a job as summarizing this as you did.
Absolutely.
And I don't mean that in like an
I always do
way.
Worse. So Dune is intense. Dune is essentially what we're saying.
Yeah.
There's a lot of politics in it. The like quote unquote magic systems in it are gorgeous.
Yeah.
The technology is awesome. Mm-hmm. There's a really cool amount of we're set in the future, but we're not using any futuristic tech. Why is that? He has some great reasons for that.
Yep.
Just very cool in general.
Also, Frank Herbert is just a fucking genius.
Yeah,
there aren't a lot of authors that I'm willing to say that about. I won't even say that about Robert Jordan, and I think he wrote the greatest fantasy series of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he was necessarily a genius. I think he was just a good writer.
Yeah.
Frank Herbert was a genius.
Oh.
Like, okay, so there's another author named Dan Wells who has said before that he doesn't like when people try to say things like Dune is about the ecosystem, or Dune is about politics, or Dune is about religion, or Dune is about drugs, because yes, but also it's about all of those things and more. And to paint it as just one of those things is to completely miss the scope of this story. And I think scope is a great term.
Scope is great on this one.
Yeah. I think it's one of the things that Denis Villeneuve did a great job with in the adaptations. I've said this to a lot of friends before. I think the Dune adaptations that we're getting right now are essentially going to be what the Lord of the Rings movies are to the Lord of the Rings books.
Oh, that's so cool.
Like, there are certainly some problems with the adaptations, and any diehard fans of the books are going to find them.
Yep.
And they're going to have some issues with them. But I don't think we're ever in our lifetime going to see an adaptation that approaches the quality of it. It's just not going to happen.
Agreed.
And I can't really speak to the Harry Potter thing because, like, I was into Harry Potter when I was really young, and then I got very out of it, and to the point where I didn't like it at all. And now I'm just to the point where I'm like, I'm interested in it to see, like, why it was so successful. Yeah. I watch it about once every 2 years, 3 years.
It's more than I watch it.
And I do it just because I'm like, there's something here. There's something that captured people in such a universal way. And I want to figure that out. And I still haven't done it. But I like the idea of it.
Yep, absolutely.
But yeah, I never got past the third book of the Harry Potter series.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you seen all the movies?
Yeah, I've seen all the movies.
Interesting. Very interesting. I liked book 7.
Oh, okay.
I also liked book 5, even though it was the most bloated.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. You know, I liked a lot of books that people have considered bloated in other series as well.
Yeah, you didn't mind the slog.
The one, yeah. Toward the end, I did. The last book was rough of the Slog and the Wheel of Time. Middle one was kind of rough, but not as bad. I can't remember. Do people consider 7 part of the Slog?
I can't.
Because I think some people do, and those people I vehemently disagree with.
I don't think that's
7 was great.
We have strayed off of the path.
Yeah. Okay.
We must be guided back.
Yep.
Saw a little sand mouse.
I knew that this was a dangerous episode for me. There are so many rabbit trails on this episode that I can go down.
Yeah. There's a ton.
Yeah. Before we go much further, I want to talk about the other adaptations that have happened.
Do it.
Or haven't happened. Almost did.
Yes.
The next most popular is probably going to be David Lynch's. It was the 1984 one.
Nice.
Yep. I rewatched that one just because we were doing this episode, and I'm like, I need to refresh myself on this.
That was 40 years ago,
yeah.
Connor.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Here's the thing. It's not as bad as I remembered it being.
Nice.
It's still not good. It has some actually pretty stunning visuals from time to time, but there are other parts where you're just like, you were using green screen in 84. You shouldn't have been doing that.
Stop doing that.
You shouldn't be using green screen in most scenarios now. You really shouldn't have in 1984 in any scenario. But there is some stuff where I go, wow, that was actually really pretty and some of the set design was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
In the books, we don't get a whole lot of what Getty Prime actually looks like.
No.
And so it's kind of completely left up to whoever's doing the adaptation to
Go and
figure that out.
Yep.
I prefer the new adaptations one.
Me too.
It's very H.R. Geiger inspired.
Nice.
But the other one has its own sort of charm to it as well. Like everything is like this nasty green, like if you've ever seen Dark City, it reminds me a lot of the art design in Dark City.
Nice.
Also, there's a lot in that that's just confusing. Like, I feel like they added world building to it on top of what Frank Herbert had, but then they don't explain the world building that they're adding on top of it. What Frank Herbert does is like throw you into this world and just go, everybody knows what's going on. Like, the reason nobody's giving you exposition on this is because everybody just kind of understands it.
You're in the world now.
Yeah.
That's it.
The 1984 Dune has things like, we've attached this cat to a machine and you have to take care of the cat because it will provide you with the antidote to the poison we're giving you in your food every day. Also, the Atreides have a pug that they just carry around all the time, and at one point, Gurney Halleck, played by Patrick Stewart, just has the pug as he charges the Harkonnens. Like, it's weird. This is a weird movie.
That's a really weird movie.
Also, we get tons of voiceovers of just, like, popping into people's heads to try to, like, almost... They're trying to pull from what the books were doing, which is you jump into one person's head and then you jump into another, and it creates sort of this tapestry. But because you can't have constant voiceover, it just feels super out of place every time it happens. Yeah, they included a new weapon that the Atreides were working on that makes sound into basically
I remember that as
bolts.
a small person. My mom was watching it at some point. I was like, oh, where's the sound energy bolts in Dune? When I was reading it.
Yeah, they're not in there at all.
There isn't any sound energy bolts.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's a strange movie all the way around. Also, at the end of that movie, Paul just, by force of will, makes Arrakis start raining. Like, he pulls all the clouds in and it starts raining everywhere. Yeah, it is a bizarre movie.
Adaptation here. Like, there's adaptations and then there's creative liberties.
Yeah, and this one, okay, I'm glad you brought that up.
Nice.
Because I also watched Jodorowsky's Dune, which was not ever... It wasn't an adaptation. It was the name of the documentary about an adaptation that never happened of Dune.
Ooh.
All the way back in like 60-something.
Oh, okay.
And there is... This one made me angry.
Nice. Why?
Because it illustrated to me exactly the issue that a lot of Hollywood adaptations have, which is a complete disregard for the source material. You keep going into these interviews one after another where it was like, hey, this person was working on this thing. H.R. Geiger was actually brought on board for this adaptation to do the Harkonnen stuff.
Okay.
But like every single person was like, yeah, I hadn't actually read the books, but I had heard about it, and like, yeah, every single person.
That's insane.
And this was including the director who was putting together this team. Later in the documentary, the director starts talking about the fact that in adaptation, you can't respect the source material, and essentially what you have to do is rape the source material. Yeah, and I'm like,
Oof.
okay, this is just showing me how much of an ego you have to the
Yeah.
point where you believe that nothing created before you has more of an artistic quality than you do yourself.
Yeah.
It made me very angry.
It says Connor's angry self right now.
This is my civil angry self.
Yeah, exactly.
My angry self
Was at home.
comes out when I'm running.
Nice. There you go.
Or when I'm in a mosh pit, one of the two.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
You can choose more of either one of those.
Yes. But yeah, so I think what I really appreciate about Denis Villeneuve is his adaptation is one that understands adaptation to a certain degree has to be transgressive.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain things that just won't translate if you go directly from the book to the screen.
No.
And I think like David Lynch's film illustrates some of the problems with it. You can't be in people's head the entire time.
Exactly.
They had to cut out the dinner party scene, which is my favorite scene in the book.
Because it's just impossible to do.
You can't do it on film. I mean, you could, but it would take like at least 30 minutes of setup.
Exactly.
And it's only like 10 pages long. It's not a very long scene.
No.
10 pages is kind of a long scene. It's kind of a long scene,
Yeah,
but it's still...
it's not very much of the book.
Yeah.
I guess it's actually almost 10% of the book. But...
The book's not 100 pages.
170.
No.
Are you sure?
No, it's like...
I'll check it at some point.
I don't know how long that book is, but
Nice.
it is well more than 100 pages.
Oh, I think it was 17 hours. Whoops.
Yeah, that's well more than 170
that's
pages.
That's true. Let's double check this. It's only 896, Connor. I don't know what you're talking about.
But yeah, so I think to a certain degree, like some artistic liberty has to be taken when you're adapting something. But I think for the most part, Denis Villeneuve did a very reasonable job with what he had.
And portraying a very complex subject matter.
Yeah.
Like, he did it absolutely. You're probably not going to hear a lot about what technically he did well, because everything technically he did perfectly, as you were hearing in our ratings. Like, if you like go and watch this movie just for the fact that it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Like, it's so well executed.
I did have one thing that I heard from I want to say it was the sound director.
Cam.
Of Dune.
The soundtrack is gorgeous.
Yeah, the soundtrack is gorgeous. But he was saying, like, basically, the instructions that he had from Villeneuve were the same as everybody got through the whole film, which is, I want it to be real, have absolutely nothing that does not fit the world of Arrakis.
Nice.
And so the idea is, with the sound, he said he wanted it to sound like a documentary.
Yeah.
And basically...
Oh, got you. Okay, I was wondering why some of the audio was as low as it was.
Yeah. So, like, when you think of it in those terms, which I did when I watched part 1 again, because I saw the interview between watching part 2 and then watching part 1.
Mm-hmm.
But watching part 1 again, like, the music almost only comes in on like wide shots and scene transitions and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Almost everything there is either no sound or you can directly attribute it to something. It's diegetic.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah. And so I think like looking at it with that lens, you can see every single detail was meticulously crafted, because if it doesn't belong on the planet, it doesn't go in the movie.
So good. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
And they did such a good job with the worms. I'm glad that we didn't they didn't do as well a good of a job in the first movie as they did in the second, and so I'm glad they didn't show very much of them in the first movie.
Yeah.
Second one, they just kill you. Like the worms are gorgeous.
Oh yeah.
In the second movie, it's really really well done.
Yes.
So let's go into a little bit of nitpicks on this one.
All right.
Lovely. You can go first if you'd like.
No, you go first because every time I open my mouth, I dominate the conversation for 10 minutes.
And that's fine. This is your episode, my man. So my wife and I have had a lot of conversations on this movie because we both really do also enjoy Dune, specific parts of it, like the people. Specifically, I feel like Johnny did not get treated well in the adaptations.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Because of the fact that they missed there's a relatively large emphasis both on Duke Leto and Lady Jessica's relationship, and then on Paul and Johnny's relationship, which isn't in either of these movies. Johnny feels more like a plot device than a person, which gets annoying to me.
Okay.
Like in the book, she is a very well connected person to Paul, an advisor, has a kid with him.
Yeah.
Like she's with him for like 7 some odd years before, I think even before he becomes Kwisatz Haderach. But it's intense.
It's arguable that he's the Kwisatz Haderach
the entire time.
From the time he's born.
A very good point.
Yeah.
A very good point.
Sorry.
Until he realizes the potential of who he is. And that gets rushed a lot in the second movie. And it's sad.
Yeah. I mean, in answer to that, I would say the entire second half of the book gets pretty rushed. They did cut out one of my favorite things. It's in none of the adaptations from the book. So, number one, there's no dinner party scene ever adapted. Number two, there is a scene in the book where Chani reveals to Paul that she has been killing people that have come to duel him.
Basically, I forgot that.
Basically to save him time.
Yeah.
Because they establish in the adaptation, in the first part of the adaptation, and earlier in the book, that the Fremen view of things is if you are strong, or the strongest leads, right? And so if you want to lead, then you come challenge the strong. And Paul has set himself up essentially as the strongest of the
strongest.
And so everybody that wants to test their mettle comes to fight Paul. And so Chani is like, if they know that they might end up dying to a woman, they might not come in.
Yeah, I do remember that. I remember that a lot. Like, yes.
Exactly. I think that just illustrates the depth of their relationship so well. Like, the idea that she is, like, that supportive of him. And, like, even if they have disagreements, she is willing to just kill anybody that comes to challenge him because, like, it's not worth his time.
It's not worth his time. And, like, the connection there is missing, and I would really have liked to see more of it. I understand that there's only so much you can go, but so.
And I think some of what they were trying to do thematically with Chani worked really well. In the adaptation, the part 2.
Yeah.
And I think they probably sacrificed some of the relationship dynamics for placing her in the position that they did, which is essentially Paul is not the Messiah, and I refuse to believe that he is. Which actually gets to some of my nitpicks if you're willing to go. All right.
This.
They completely erased any sort of nuance to the relationship that Paul and Jessica have to the Fremen religion. There is no innocence left that it can be afforded to them.
Yeah.
Every single thing that they are doing is a stepping stone in order to use the Fremen. What I really appreciate about the nuance of the book is Paul is essentially walking down this path because he has no other choice.
Yep.
And Jessica is sort of having to grapple with the fact that she's losing her son and there's nothing that she can really do to stop it.
Yep.
And I think by giving Jessica, they gave her more, what's the term? I should know this. I'm a writer, I promise.
Clout?
No, agency.
Oh, okay.
They give her more agency, but in giving her agency, they completely take away any innocence that either of them have. And I think one of the points that Frank Herbert really wanted to hammer home was when we have systems that people have to fall into, they become trapped by those systems.
Yep.
And they're not really trapped by the systems in these films anymore.
No.
It is just Jessica doing what Jessica does. And she goes from being the far more forgivable side that we see of the Bene Gesserit
Yep.
to, okay, you are basically the worst of the Bene Gesserit we see on screen. Even the Reverend Mother that is advising the Emperor, you're like, I actually don't feel like she's that bad. She just told him to do what was politically savvy.
Exactly. The level of manipulation, like I feel like it's even mentioned in the first book that the religion that the Aes Sedai, dang it, see,
that
the Bene Gesserit go and sow is like so far off from what it originally was.
Yeah.
That it's still useful, but it's different. Like it's made its own life.
I also really appreciate that Paul is fulfilling a lot of these things almost on accident. Maybe not on accident, but incidentally.
Yes.
Like he doesn't necessarily know all of the things that he's supposed to do. A lot of the things that he finds out he's supposed to do are because he sees the future and goes, if I do this thing, then things go worse for everyone. And if I do this thing, then things only go a little bit bad.
Exactly.
So like at the end of part 2, when he sends all of the Fremen across the galaxy in Holy War, what they've completely missed is, yes, he did this, but in the books they make it very clear Paul saw the possibility of a holy war in his name that was much smaller than the potential massacre that would have happened across the entire galaxy if he hadn't taken control.
Yeah.
And so, like, it puts you in this really weird moral position of, like, okay, do I side with the guy who has billions dead in his name? Or do I side against him and say, no, he should have just let everybody across the galaxy get just decimated by the Fremen without a leader or with a different leader that would have actually been bloodthirsty.
Exactly.
You know? Like, it's just such an interesting question, and I feel like we lose a lot of that with the adaptation. It's really my biggest frustration.
Completely. Whew.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
I love Dune.
I feel like the tone between the two movies is really different, which sets me off a little bit.
I do feel like they shifted.
It feels like the first one was, hey, we're going to do something kind of cool, artistically fun for a cool story that we're doing. And the second one was, oh, the first one worked really well. We're going to go and make it perfect, which loses a little bit of the cool, like, little interpersonal charm that the first one had.
Yeah. I think one thing that this had a lot more of that the second one did not have. For context, we watched part one today.
Exactly.
But what part 1 had a lot more of than part 2 is the conversations between people that kind of humanized them.
Yeah.
And made them feel like, okay, these are actually people that interact with each other and that kind of thing. Like, Duncan Idaho making digs at the fact that Paul hadn't put on any muscle. And
Exactly.
like those little moments did a lot of heavy lifting, because even in the first one, I remember thinking like, wow, there's not very much interpersonal dialogue.
Exactly.
And watching the second one, I don't think that I can pick out a line that was interpersonal dialogue as opposed to just like, hey, we're really trying to hammer home either themes or what's happening in the story or something like that.
Stilgar saying it's not clever when finding the arsenal.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
Yep. I think most of that interpersonal dialogue comes from Stilgar.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah. Agreed. Yeah, I do love Dune.
Yeah, a lot. So both movies are fantastic.
Yep.
You should easily go and watch both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then read the first and the second at least.
Yeah.
If you want to go a little crazy, you can do 3 and 4.
I would recommend 3 and 4. If you're like me, then you'll want to read all 6 of the ones written by Frank Herbert. But I would say 4 is the last one that I would say any like hardcore sci-fi fan needs to read.
Nice.
And watch all of the movies.
Watch all of the movies. And you can watch the old one. That sounds fun.
No. I mean, you can. It's a cult classic, but it falls into the category of cult classic that I don't actually enjoy.
Dang.
I would say there are 3 cult classic things. There are movies that are so terribly bad that people enjoy watching them.
Yes.
Referred to as so bad it's good, but I can't find the good, so I don't call them that.
I think that one's tied to nostalgia, so anyway, continue.
I don't know. I don't think people watch The Room because of nostalgia.
That's true. I'm just saying they have correlation.
Okay, that's fair. 2 is the type that Dune falls into, which is like, this is weird, and there are lots of things to pick out about it that I really enjoy, but for the most part, I know that this isn't a very good movie. I just like it.
Totally.
And then 3 are like I'd call them like sleeper classics.
Yeah, Princess Bride.
I don't know that one's quite a sleeper classic. That one's weird.
That one's a weird
because
one.
It doesn't actually fall into any of the, it's halfway between sleeper classic and actual classic.
Exactly.
Because everybody's seen Princess Bride.
So many people have seen Princess Bride.
That kind of occupies the same category as like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, right? Like, I know you haven't seen that, but most people that have like watched movies with their families growing up, at least in our generation, have seen those 2 movies.
Agreed.
But I would say like the sleeper classics are things like I can't think of any of like the actual ones that would fit in there, but I think Logan will fit in there one day.
Nice.
I think we're on our way to seeing it. That movie has already been forgotten, and it was a masterpiece. Oh, Memento, my favorite movie of all time, I think falls into that category. Just sort of like the great movies that nobody ever like brings up in normal conversation is like, hey, this is a great movie.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, I don't know. I genuinely can't think of a whole lot of the movies that would go in that category, but they're out there, and I've watched them.
Yes, you have.
I probably own a decent amount of them.
At least a fair number. Lovely.
Yeah. Feel like we skipped a lot of the things that we would normally talk about, but
it's because it's Dune. Like, the themes are hard in this.
Yeah.
You know, like you were saying, there isn't a really nice and easy to paint theme.
Yeah.
Throughout,
I would say part 2 actually does have one one theme that it really drills into, and that's part of what brings it down in my
For you,
mind.
yeah.
And that's the idea of religion as a way to control people,
Exactly.
which is certainly a way that Frank Herbert saw religion, but I don't think it's the only way he saw it. And I think that, again, really comes through in the first book.
Yeah.
And some of the later ones, he kind of drills into religion as a way to control people. But in that first one, like, there's such an interesting sort of crossfire that our characters are caught in, that you really can't blame them for most of their actions.
Yeah.
You can blame for the characters in the movie adaptation for sure.
Very much can you.
Yeah.
They're very much making obvious choices.
Yeah. Instead of a Paul that is somewhere between hero and tragic figure, instead we just get Paul the villain. And Paul is less of a villain in that, and more his mother is mostly just tragic figure in the book and has been turned into villain in the movie.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Cool. So there's that one. What do we normally go? Because like the performances are outstanding.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There's no bad acting in this.
Yeah, and I would say part 2 probably has better acting than even part 1.
It does.
Part 1 has great acting.
Has really good acting, but I think part 2 has much better
Oscar
acting.
Isaac needs to be in every movie ever made.
Yeah, he does. His presence is gorgeous, and he's so cute. Goodness gracious.
Inside Llewyn Davis. Okay, that is a movie that you probably have never seen because most people haven't seen it.
Nice.
But it's incredible. It's a Coen Brothers film. It stars Oscar Isaac as a folk singer, and I love the movie to hell and back.
That's pretty far.
It's also pretty depressing.
We found why, guys.
It's about music and it's depressing. That's
all that Connor needs.
That's all that Connor needs.
The perfect movie for Connor.
Yeah. All the performances were outstanding. I would say Austin Butler as Phaedratha was... I don't think I've ever seen Austin Butler in anything else.
I don't know who Austin Butler is, so except for Phaedratha.
Yeah. Again, I don't know that I've seen him in anything else. I'm willing to say that this is career best for him, regardless of whether he's been in something else
that's been good.
That's been incredible. He could have pulled every heartstring in some other thing that he's been in that I've never seen, and I'm still saying that this is career best acting.
Yeah. He did so well.
I genuinely think, number one, I'm calling it now. It's not going to win Best Picture, but it should at the Oscars next year. Austin Butler should win Best Supporting Actor, and he won't.
Nice. Cool. We're gonna
Those
take
are
it
my
down.
theories.
I love that.
I was pleasantly surprised. Oppenheimer won Best Picture this past year.
Exactly.
So.
That was really nice.
Yeah.
It's such a good movie.
Yeah.
I love everything that Florence does.
Yeah.
Like, she's just fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think at some point you had mentioned you weren't entirely sure on Christopher Walken.
I don't know if I mentioned that to you, but you're right. I wasn't entirely sure on Christopher Walken as the Emperor. I thought he did a good job.
I think he did a good job as well.
Yeah. He didn't bring quite the amount of gravitas that I would have appreciated.
I
but
actually kind of appreciated that he didn't.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of goes to the, like, hey, the Emperor
This
has
sort
been
of
here for too long.
spinelessness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay, that's fair.
the kind of blowy in the wind kind of character.
Yeah.
Politically.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
We're not gonna cover outstanding scenes
Because you can't.
There
Just go
aren't
watch the movie.
There aren't any outstanding scenes because in order to elevate one, you have to diminish all the other ones, and you can't do that with this movie.
Only outstanding scene then is him riding the worm in part 2.
And all of the worms coming out of the sandstorm.
And all of the worms coming out of the sandstorm.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yep.
Only on saving scenes. Sorry, guys. Just kidding. Again, it's because it's so good. Just go watch it.
Yeah.
It's so lovely.
Yeah. Every time the Fremen burst out of the ground.
So good.
Uh,
The practical effects in that, like, it gets me
Right?
every
Yeah.
time. I'm like, how did you do that? How are you running now?
It's so cool.
It's so cool.
Also, a thing about David Lynch's Dune that bugs the hell out of me is Paul tells Jessica, hey, walk without a rhythm so that we don't attract the worm. And then they just walk with a normal rhythm. It shows them just walking. And I'm like, guys, you're walking like you do in deep sand. That's all you're doing.
Exactly.
You are attracting so many worms.
You have all of the worms. They're all eating you. Very Shahilud.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, I feel like also the tech got different feels in both of them. Like there's a large emphasis on shields and stuff in the first one, and then none, essentially, in the second.
That's true.
It's not as important.
I mean, I feel like part of that is they establish in the first half of the book and in the first half of the story here, shields attract worms and send them into essentially a feeding frenzy.
Exactly.
So you don't want to have a shield in the desert. And then the entire second part takes place in the desert.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so, like...
what you gonna do?
Yeah. Also, neither adaptation has the scene where Duncan Idaho just leaves a shield in the...
ground.
And
then has someone laser it and then nukes everything.
Yeah.
Like you don't get the whole, if you do a laser on a shield in either movie. I thought you would in one of the two movies, but you didn't.
Nope.
In the books, if you laser a shield, you die.
Yeah.
And so does everyone else. Which is a beautiful, it solves so many problems.
Yeah.
Like that was such a good, simple solution for Frank.
And
because these lasers are insane.
Yeah.
And these shields are insane.
Well, and it's why people so when they bring in the las guns in the book, if I remember correctly, everybody goes, wait, seriously? They're using las guns?
Yeah.
Don't they know how dangerous
that is? Like, why are they doing it? It's because Sardaukar don't give a damn. Also, the Sardaukar get a lot less intense in the second movie. Which, again, makes sense because the Fremen are here now. So...
I would be really curious to watch these movies back to back.
Mm-hmm.
And I expect that once Dune Messiah comes out, I'll be watching them back to back to back.
Yeah, we'll be able to do a revisit of this one.
Yeah.
It's going to be exciting in a couple of years.
Well, and I just think that will be how I typically watch them. At this point, I don't watch Fellowship of the Ring or Two Towers or Return of the King.
You had to
I watched Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. How you feel that?
So yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see how it will stack up as a continuous story. Because I do feel like there were enough changes to part 2 that it won't click together quite as well as I hope it will.
Yeah, like there's a vibe to it. I have seen part 2 like just so many times, nearly back to back at this point.
Yeah.
That the tone of the second movie is just different.
Yeah. It feels darker in certain areas.
It feels more operating room.
Yeah.
What's the word? Precise?
Sterile?
It feels a little more sterile. Oh, but we didn't even talk about the really cool, like the parallels in both movies. Like I was mentioning during the movie that they have some beautiful bookends.
Mm-hmm.
With like the Mother Gaius using the voice on Paul, and then Paul using the voice on Mother Gaius at the other end.
Oh yeah,
which was super cool. Both movies end in a duel.
Yep,
which I thought was also very cool.
Yeah.
But
not at the very end. At the very end, there's someone riding a sandworm.
Exactly. Which is fantastic. Again, they're doing a good job with consistency here. We actually never see Johnny get on the worm, but
that's true. But we see her set up a thumper and get her
get everything ready.
What are the hooks called? Why am I forgetting the name of the hooks?
They don't say them in the movies.
I'm at the point in the books where no one rides worms anymore.
Yeah,
So
it's outdated.
yeah.
But those are cool
It's actually frowned upon.
because they're religious items. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
They're sacred now.
Yeah. Except for the one girl who rides a worm without the hooks.
Oh, just surfs them?
One comes and picks her up
Nice.
and brings her to a city, and then they start.
Hey, Connor.
Yeah.
How do worms move? Do they? Because every time I was looking at the end scene where the worms come out of the sand storm and just start going forward, I'm like, the only way that this works is ingesting sand and then shooting it out of their butts. It's the only way this works. Or really tiny feet on the bottom of each of these worms.
So I think this is actually a case where it's not a Dune answer. It's an actual like how worms move in real life. I think they contract their bodies.
Oh, and then push out.
And then push out. And like it's so smooth because they have basically each segment is able to move independently of the others.
Yeah.
So you don't have to like do what a human would have to do, which is like
yeah, exactly. You don't have to like scrunch upwards and then forwards. Interesting. Thank you. I appreciate that. That makes me feel a little better.
That's how I understand worms move in real life. But
we should go and watch a video on how worms move in real life. Stilgar had some of the best lines.
I have some really, really like burning questions about what sort of searches when a movie like this comes out that's just huge.
Just pop to the top. That are like mundane.
Yeah. Things like how do worms move?
Exactly. Like I'm gonna Google it after this. I would love to know that from just random search queries.
I want to see what sort of search queries just spike after movies like this come out.
Absolutely. That just weren't being asked before.
All right. Again, I can talk about Dune all day, but I feel like we're probably reaching the point where...
It's only been an hour.
It's been an hour, yeah. I feel like anything else that we talk about is just going to lead down rabbit trails, so I'm going to say that we should probably wrap up around here.
If you want a multi-hour Dune analysis from Connor, let us know. We'll do it. I'll be the host. I'll just ask Connor questions.
Okay. I'd be fine with that. You'll have to let me get my stack of books, and anytime I don't know the answer, I'll flip through.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be a live stream.
And it might just be something where I sit here and read the entire time, and Trenton looks bored.
We'll have Dune playing in the background. It'll be on loop.
Just a short scene though, so we don't get copyright striked.
Exactly. Lovely. What are we watching next week? Are we actually going to watch the thing we're supposed to watch, or are we going to start Ghibli? We'll probably decide that offline, but
yeah. I have Gladiator was supposed to be the next one.
It's the second time I've gotten you.
I know.
I just finished editing Psycho the other day, and I did that, and I was like, oh, it feels so good every time.
I think we should watch Gladiator, and then after that, we'll do our Ghibli.
Love to watch Gladiator.
Yep. Sure.
Oh, how do we end this?